Some of the most important thing in trigonometry is how to remember to find the trigonometric ratio. So as we can see in our previous video, we already talked about sine, cosine and tangent. So what I'm going to do a quick review of trigonometric ratios, and then we will talk about some rule that we call it TOA. So we say it SOH CAH TOA. We call it TOA. So let's start. So in order to describe this rule, what I'm going to do, I am going to draw a triangle. So as you can see, this is my right triangle, triangle A, B, and C. And as you can see, angle C is right. So the name of the side opposite to C is hypotenuse. We call it hypotenuse. What I'm going to do, I'm going to consider one angle as my reference angle. So I'm going to consider angle A as my reference angle. So if A is my reference angle, then the name of side opposite to A, which is this side, is known as opposite. We call it opposite. And name of the side next to reference angle, which is this side, which is AC, is called adjacent. So we call the name of the side next to reference angle as adjacent. Now, if you remember, we talked about the three basic trigonometric functions, and our first function was sine A. Sine A is opposite over hypotenuse. So sine is basically opposite over hypotenuse. My second trigonometric ratio was cosine of A, and cosine A is adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent over hypotenuse. And my last basic trigonometric function was tangent A, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. So tangent is basically opposite over adjacent. So as you can see, my three basic trigonometric function is sine, which is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine, which is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent, which is opposite over adjacent. Now the question is, how did we come up with this rule? So what we did basically, we took the first alphabet of each trigonometric ratio. So let's see what we did. So what we did, we took S from sine, and then sine is opposite, so we took that O from the opposite and H from the hypotenuse. So we wrote S from sine, O from opposite, and H from hypotenuse. And then from cosine, we took C from cosine, A from adjacent, and H from hypotenuse. So we wrote it as C, A, H. And C is from cosine, this A is from adjacent, A, and this H is from hypotenuse. And then the tangent was, we got T from tangent, so we wrote T, and then O from opposite, O, and then A from adjacent. This A. So we got SOHCAH TOA. So we got SOHCAH TOA. So the first three, these three, they represent sine function. The middle three, they represent cosine function, and then the last three represents tangent function. So this is how we will remember. We will remember the basic function sine, cosine, and tangent as SOHCAH TOA. SOHCAH TOA, which means what? Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. Now let's consider an example. So my example is find sine A and cosine A. And the triangle is given as triangle ABC. This is A, this is B, and this is C. And the sides are given as 20, 21, and 29. And what we need to do? We need to find sine A and cosine A. So A is my reference angle. This is my reference reference angle. So if A is reference angle, then my opposite is basically what? 21. My adjacent is 20, and then 29 is my hypotenuse, right? hypotenuse, hypotenuse. So let's find the sine. So my sine of A is, let's look at this. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. We got sine as OH. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. And what is my opposite? If you look closely, you can see my opposite is 21. So I have 21 over, my hypotenuse is right here, which is what? 29. Now, what is my cosine? My cosine is, let's look at this. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So we'll write cosine as adjacent over hypotenuse. So my cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and as you can see, my adjacent is what? 20. So I will write 20 over, my hypotenuse is right here, as you can see, right here, which is 29. So my sine is 21 over 29, and my cosine is 20 over 29. And how did we get sine and cosine? We use this rule, SOHCAH TOA, which is what? Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and we can also use tangent as opposite over adjacent. And this is how we will use the SOHCAH TOA rule for finding the trigonometric ratios.